Good evening, everyone. So I hope everything is a little bit warmer inside and outside. It's we're getting close to winter, and naturally we're getting closer to Christmas time. And this is our last meeting in English of 2017. This year we had, I'd say, 11 meetings in English, because there was a month where we didn't have, in Jorespi, we didn't have that month in English. So this is our 11th of the year, and they are being transmitted online as well, so people can watch live or can watch these meetings later. And as we usually do, starting at 7, we read a message, we say a prayer, then we read a message, make a brief comment, then we have the main talk for the night. And tonight I'm going to be reading and making a comment on the message, and then Hendrick is going to do the main talk of the night, talking about incarnation, and if incarnation is a suffering. So for us to start, let's do our initial prayer. And if you want, you can close your eyes so that we can focus on the words and on the feelings that we send towards God, towards the good spirits, and also towards our dear Master and friend Jesus, by saying, "Dear God, creator of all things, of the big ones, and also of our small hearts, we are grateful for being here once again, for having this opportunity of being alive, of sharing this planet, of sharing this life with friends, with the ones who we need for us to grow, for us to improve, for us to be better people. So thank you, God, for this blessing of living. We would also like now not only to thank you, but to ask for your protection, so that you, through our good spirits, the ones that are always around us, in this Spirit Center, and everywhere, so that they can, being close to us, inspire in all of us good deeds, good thoughts, so that we can practice what we've been studying of God, of you, of your, and of Jesus' teachings. May your blessings fall upon us and on our readings. So be it. So, as we said in the beginning, we would read and make a brief comment on the message. And as we've been following the book, Our Daily Bread, Andrew, can you just turn that bottom part there? My name is already there with the message number. I forgot to do that. So tonight we're going to read the message number 95 on the book, Our Daily Bread, written by Chico Xavier, and the Spirit Emmanuel who gave the message through him. In message 95 is entitled, "This is the Message." And Emmanuel takes a small piece, a small verse from the first letter of John, chapter 13, verse number 11. He takes this passage, and the passage says this: "For this is the message you have heard from the beginning. Let us love one another." And Emmanuel makes the following comment: "All over the world, we feel a tremendous longing for new messages from heaven. The dynamic forces of thought insist on removing modern expressions of old truths, and this provides opportunities for different mental creations. We can see, however, that art, in seeking new expressions, is populated with negative images, that politics, in creating ideologies and new processes for governing, expands the course of destructive war, and that science, in seeking to soar even higher, invents theories that impinge on harmony and well-being. The great branches of religion are making a gallant effort to demonstrate the eternality of life by beseeching spectacular signs from the invisible realm for ordinary people. We must agree that the lofty aspirations of the human spirit are always useful when it truly seeks expressions of a divine nature. However, we must also agree that even though there are countless substantial, spiritually constructive, and illuminating messages on earth, the greatest and most invaluable of all, ever since the beginning of the planet's organization, has been that of fraternal solidarity in let us love one another. This is a fundamental recommendation. By understanding its meaning, each disciple can examine in life's daily circle of struggle the level of understanding that he or she already possesses regarding the divine plan. Oh, this is just this. Love, let us love one another. That's what John tells us based on Jesus's message. And he says that this is the message. And Emmanuel comes and makes this very interesting text when he says, well, let me restart. And then I'll say what Emmanuel wants to say. We are always, as a group of people, no matter where we are always looking for new stuff. Always. Oh, it's the new car. It's the new watch. It's the new iPhone. It's the new Samsung. It's the new, and then we can choose. Whatever it is, it's the new soda, it's the new food, it's the new clothing, it's the new accessory for this, it's the new. It is as if we are never satisfied. There's no problem in doing this. There's no problem in looking for new stuff. There's no problem in trying to find a better thing than we had before. The question is, how are we doing this? What are we forgetting when we are trying to find a new thing? And why are we trying to find it? That's basically what Emmanuel will talk about, because he says, he only talks about a message, that we are always looking for a new message. I'm expanding to everything so that we can understand, because sometimes I think and I believe that for us it's easier to see material things and to think about things that we can touch than about things that we can only think, that we can only imagine, that we can only feel. So when I'm looking for a brand new phone, when I'm looking for a brand new car, when I'm looking for a brand new science, when I'm looking for a brand new solution, a brand new medicine, a brand new treatment for the disease, a brand new this, a brand new that, why are we doing this? And how are we doing this? Emmanuel says that all over the world, that's how he feels, that's how he starts the text. All over the world, meaning that he's talking about all of us and every single one of us. We feel a tremendous longing, that need for new messages from heaven, as if we are waiting for a new message to come to us. And we try to find it. We try to go after it. It always needs to be something new. It cannot be something that works. It needs to be something new. Oh, we're never satisfied with this. So we're looking for the new medium, for the new person that's going to talk, or the new speaker that comes from Brazil, the new priest, the new church, the new this, the new that. And he says, it is fine that this is dynamic, this is moving, this is not a static thing. We need to do this, but how are we doing it? And what is the intention behind this? What is making us walk towards this? And then he says, we see art looking to do something. And then we see a lot of things in art that instead of making people grow spiritually, it's putting in people's minds images of hatred, images of division, images of sexuality, perverted sexuality, for example, or any type of thing that instead of making us grow, makes us feel even heavier than what art should be. And then he talks about politics. Politics should be done for the betterment of all society, and not for people to get money and put money inside their own pockets. Science can create marvelous things, like I was saying, new medicine for us to be better, for us to improve in this side or in the other side. But then we see a lot of people getting richer and richer and richer in science, and having more and more money, and these huge companies with lots and lots of money, and a lot of people suffering, a lot of people without being able to have access to those same drugs that they are making millions and millions and millions of dollars. So it's not about complaining that they are doing this or that. It's for us to reflect upon what are we doing in our lives, and how are we doing these same types of things? What moves us? And what Emmanuel says, that the oldest message has not changed. And if we had learned that message, we would be doing things in such a different way today that things could have been much, much better than what they are right now. And what is this message? That's what John says. For this is the message you have heard from the beginning. Let us love one another. If we put love in everything that we need, in everything that we do, if we don't think only in myself, in gaining for me, in having everything that I need, instead of thinking of, okay, I need this, but the other person also needs this, and we can make it together. I can do part for him, part for her, and part for myself, and really spreading this idea of being together, of thinking about doing things not only for one person, which is usually me, but doing things for a community, for a group of people, we will make it better. So we can, and sometimes we wait for another person to do, or for a group of people to do something, and we forget that we could do something. So I just remembered a very simple research that was done. It's not a scientific research, but it's very interesting. We see lots of schools, for example, in Brazil, where I am from. Some schools are going really, really bad, and they don't have the basic things that they should have. And there's another school in the same town which has everything that they should have. Like the kids have whatever it is, pencils, have chairs, have everything. And the other school doesn't have anything, or everything is broken. And then they went there to see what's the difference between this school and this school. Both schools are supposed to be run by the government. But on this school where everything is happening, the parents of the kids decided that they don't want their kids to be studying in a school that's all broken. So they started to work together with the school to help the school to provide the best that they can. And with the help of the parents, that school is much better. One could be saying, no, but that's what the government should be doing. Yeah, but if the government is not doing, then let's try to do something. And it's not going to work only for me. It's going to work for me, for my kids, for everybody's kids. So this is a communal action. This is something that we need to learn, that if we don't take action to provide for the community, if we think only about me and about blaming the others, where are we going to stop? I'm going to live only in my shell, in my house, and not get out and never do anything for anybody because oh no, and nobody does anything for me. That's not the message. The message is I need to do something. It's not about waiting for the other to do. It's about me doing something in whatever level I can. If I can't do on this side, I can do on that side. If I can't do here, I can do here. Have to learn that we cannot do everything, but we need to do something. We cannot solve all the world's problems, but we can solve small problems that affect that small group of people that are surrounding me. And being present, excuse me, being present and being there, trying to do this, trying to really help each other and help one another to improve. So this is the message. Love, let us love one another as John told us and as Jesus taught us. And with this, we reach the end of this initial part. Thank you, Chris. We reached the end of this initial part, and we are going to invite Hendrick to talk to us about the gospel according to Spiritism.
Good evening, everyone. I was asked that God give us inspiration to have a nice and fruitful conversation tonight. As Mackenzie said, the study that we continue, this is the 11th meeting of this year. We've been doing these once a month for a good number of years now. And so today we're trying to finish chapter number 4 in the Gospel according to Spiritism, which is the chapter on reincarnation. As I'm sure I've said here in the past, the beauty of the Gospel according to Spiritism is sort of the order that Kardec decided to organize the book, of course, with the instructions of the spirits and with the guidance of his spiritual. The superior spirits at the time. But the order of these chapters makes a lot of sense in sort of this introduction of the morals, the moral code of the Spiritist doctrine, right, or the moral basis of the Spiritist doctrine. And it's always, talking, it always mentions something from the Bible, usually from the New Testament. And so in this chapter 4, we have already talked, we've already seen, how reincarnation will help us, it is aimed at helping the spirits grow, helping the spirits fulfill their purpose or our purpose of striving for perfection, of our destiny for perfection. But in this last piece here, he brings a message from the Spirit St. Louis, a message that was received in 1859 in Paris, that talks about this need for the incarnation, not just reincarnation, but the basic need of incarnation. He starts, as usual, he likes to use questions as part of, bringing the ideas of Spiritism forward. He asks, and this is the question of the night, is whether incarnation is a punishment and our guilty spirits, supposedly those who are incarnated, which would mean all of us, are we bound to suffer these punishments? And so in this message, St. Louis has it's a very short message, but he touches on a lot of important aspects of incarnation. And I wanted to go back to the Spirits book, the first book of Spiritism, wherein in chapter 2 of the first book, he's talking about the incarnation of spirits. And the very first question is, what is the aim of the incarnation of spirits? Notice that we're talking about incarnation, not reincarnation, but incarnation first. And that's just so we can understand the setup of why it is that we are in this what seems to be a perpetual cycle of reincarnations, right? So by definition, and I wanted to bring the definition here, the spirits say right away, it is a necessity imposed on the spirits by God. Let me bring it this other translation here. So God imposes incarnation for the purpose of leading spirits to perfection. For some, it's an expiation, and for others, a mission. And so that sets us up to the understanding of what it means to be incarnated, and why it is that we have to go through this, right? So when we're thinking about the love of God, the justice of God, and how spirits exist, and where spirits lie, where we err, right? Where spirits outside of this corporeal life would exist, that would tend to lead for us to ask a lot of questions about, what is the point of this weird situation that God has put us in, incarnated in this world. If we are spirits and we are all spiritual beings, then how come we need the vicissitudes of corporeal life, material life, to learn the things we need to learn, right? So we tend to answer the question, well, Earth is a school, so you're here to learn, or you're here to suffer the consequences of your acts. And so, Kardec really went for okay, well, you say that there's some learning to do. And so, but how about this punishment? It seems to us, everything you tell us about the spiritual life, the enlightened spirits, or the spirits that are, that are no longer required to incarnate, they're all living a very good spiritual life, it seems. And so, why do we have to? Why do we have to be in this body that's going to rot, and we're going to suffer through pain and disease. We're going to suffer through the needs of the flesh, as some would say. We're going to suffer through hunger, through thirst, through this need to be in society, to be in community. Why not just skip all of that, and we would be, it would be much easier to learn outside of this body. And so the message starts, and I put down about 10 points here. So I'm going to just go through some of the comments that in this one little paragraph St. Louis talks about. So first of all, it's this fulfillment of purpose. Being creatures of God, being part of the creation, we tend to remove ourselves from the thinking of God's creation, and we think of everything else that God has made, or that God has created, or that God does for us, or as separate from us, sometimes almost as if we are not really a part of that purpose, of God's purpose, right? So we say, well, God assigned, so he says right away, God assigned you to fulfill your purpose on earth for your own good. And, it makes you wonder about, well, I mean, if it's for my own good, I'd rather be good somewhere else. I'd rather be not good, not here. I'd rather be, in this life that you are telling us is so much better, more, more free. We seem very tied down, very, very, even gravity seems to pull us down, right? It's as if everything is pulling us down, just like gravity. And, so he talks about, well, incarnation, again, going back to, we're talking about incarnation, doesn't start where we are right now, obviously. If we look at just the history of our planet, we can see, the Homus, the Homus erectus, and, the primates before them, etc. We see, the anthropologists studying and, finding sort of these missing links between modern humans and the primates. And so at some point, thousands, millions of years ago, there were some very crude versions of ourselves roaming this planet. And so, at a minimum, that's where we need to start thinking of where incarnation begins. If we think about God as being fully just, as being loving, as being all-seeing, and having a purpose for all of us, then we must think that when we first started at that level, or even at an earlier level, but let's think of just the earliest Homo erectus, and those species of pre-humans, and we can see that there was a lot that differentiate us from them, especially in and how our intellect, how our intelligence works today versus when it did back then. So, when the Spirit is saying to fulfill a purpose for your own good, he's mentioning, that at some point, all the spirits had to start from the same spot. We're all created ignorant. We're all created, simple, and we all develop at our own pace. And so, being put into the condition of prehistoric humans, forced us as spirits, or the spirits that lived in this planet at the time, to develop their intelligence from the situation that they found themselves in. And so you'd say, well, if we think about how their lives were, our lives would be, if we think of them, we imagine that to be a major suffering, right? If I think of, well, I need to come back, I need to be born again in this planet, and I'm just going to be born again back in that time. And we could imagine ourselves as, with the intelligence and the development that we have today, that being in that situation would be a severe punishment, would feel like a severe punishment, because we're basically in a situation that is the start of our evolution. And so when we look at this, at the steps of the evolution of the humans, and the step of our evolution as spirits, anytime we think of going back to that situation, the only way we can think of it would be from as punishment. But when we were put into that situation as young spirits, as starting spirits, we were everything was new. We were starting to develop our intelligence, and as he said here, God must distribute everything in equal parts to all his children. So he established that everyone started from the same point, with the same aptitudes, the same obligations to fulfill, and having the same liberty to proceed. So God, from that start, God gave us free will. God gave us the ability to improve ourselves through, both intellectually and morally. And the only way that we can think, that we can see, well, look at a child, and even, if you look at a 2-year-old child who's a prodigy, um, you know, at 3 years old is playing all of Beethoven's symphonies, or, solving math, the most complex math problems at 7 or 8 years old. Children that are super advanced for their age, even if you look at them at that age, they still have a lot to go to continue to finish their growth in the current life. And so, in a similar way, we go through these incarnations as children go through school, or just like children going through steps of learning. So, when my kid is 5 years old and he's getting into kindergarten, he's starting to read. He's reading some books. He can put together a B and an A and make the sound bay, and put a B and a Y and makes baby. And slowly he puts that together, forms a word, forms another word, which forms a sentence. And by 5th grade, 6 years later, he's reading long books and making and having long understanding of longer paragraphs or longer stories, understanding nuances of stories. And so, as the years progress, we are all, as children, and us in general, we're all learning and improving those aspects of our lives that we, have been studying or practicing, and so on. So, in a similar way, our incarnations function very much the same way, with the exception, well, I guess, even in school, we have the freedom to do what we want, right? When we say, that God has a purpose for all of us, we have to think that he puts us in a position, in our lives, but more importantly, he puts us in the position of the lives of others, so that we can do his work for him, right? That piece of God's message is always seems to miss from us. Well, I need to be good, or I need to improve myself, or I need to do charity. But even when we're thinking that way, we're still thinking of us as I need it, and that's because God has given us free will. He's given us the ability to decide what is it that I'm going to do as part of his purpose today. And when we think of these incarnations that we are put through, and reading the message of the spirits here, we have to think of what is it that God's purpose of putting us in this situation is, right? I believe, I think it was last month, or maybe the month before, people we were talking about the families and how spirits connect to each other through their family. But the purpose of our incarnation, of each one of us incarnating, is a part of a much more grandiose purpose than just us. Our objective, our main purpose as spirits, in sort of the long view and the eternal life type of view, is that we will all eventually become, like there's one of my favorite songs in Portuguese from a spiritist singer, is that we will all become angels. We will all become like angels eventually. We will all grow our intellect, and then we will grow our moral character to the point where we won't need to be, around people who are, around such a situation of material caging, not caging, but material limitations than as we are right now. But that being the purpose, that being our final purpose personally as spirits, we're still part of a much more magnificent plan of God, of actually helping ourselves, but also helping each other, helping mankind evolve together. So, when he talks about incarnation, we have to think about this, about incarnation as a transition or a transitory state that we as spirits are put in, so that we can do this experiment in free will, is how he puts it. God has a plan for all of us. God has a plan for how we interact with each other. But it's always up to us to make our choices, to see how we do our part in the betterment of the world, or in this sort of more grandiose plan that God has for us, right? So, he says, well, spirits that come in and take in the message, and take the, and as Mackenzie was saying earlier, and take in the message, the original message, and doesn't have to keep looking for what's new in that message. How can I change that message to be excited about it again? How can I, who else can I hear that message, telling that message to me, to make me believe more, or have more faith, or have more devotion to the work of God? As he says here, if the spirits who get it, when we get the message, when we get that we are part of this plan, and we say, well, my contribution to this plan is obviously my improvement, my change towards others, towards how I deal with others, how I deal with the problems that I create, or that I used to create for others. Those spirits that recognize that, the sooner we recognize it, the earliest we can reap the fruits of what we've learned, of this grandiose plan. And the more the less we are imposed on being back into this material world, as a mode of expiation, or showing or testing ourselves to show that we have indeed grown as expected, or as it is expected of us. So he comes down. So as he analyzes the question, and he says, okay, so is this a punishment? And he concludes that a punishment is not going through the life. So let's go back to the story of or the comparison that we made with school. So as I said, a kid goes into kindergarten, and then learns to read, and gets the basic facts of math, and can count to 10, 100, 1,000, and can start doing some basic math and some basic addition and subtraction. Next year, he's in first grade, and he shows the effort, and he keeps getting to the next step, and maybe learning multiplication or whatever is in first grade. And as he moves along, every year he's going to the next step. Now, in contrast with that, we could look at a kid who's basically shows up to class and maybe in kindergarten does okay. Well, everybody else was still, you didn't do so well as everybody else, but you're still, okay, we'll let you go. And then you're in first grade, and your parents are being called in, and then you're in second grade. And at some point, the teachers will say, well, you're just not keeping up. You're going to have to do this again. And, that could be third grade, fifth grade, whatever. But you have to do this again because you haven't shown that you've learned. And so, he goes into that fifth grade again, and barely makes it out to sixth grade, and then he gets to sixth grade and repeats again. And so, as when we look at that comparison, we can see, well, going through each year of school is not punishment, right? Of course, some of us like to go to school. Some of us don't like to go to school quite as much. Some of us, like half of the subjects, but not the other half, right? I mean, every kid treats it differently. But every year of school, we're actually growing. We're going somewhere, and we eventually, grow up to be adults, and we've learned, to communicate at a minimum, to communicate well, and to function in our modern society. But if we decide that, to be trouble in school, then we will repeat it. And that repetition is what feels more like punishment. So, in comparison to incarnations and reincarnation in particular, if you just keep going back to the same condition, then to a lot of spirits, or to if you follow the logical idea here, that the spirit just keeps coming back and being sort of the same troublemaker that he is, or that he's been from one life to the next, then there's no other way to look at it as than punishment, because you will see all eventually all of the spirits that have been around or that are around him or that spirit, will continue to grow, just like kids who continue to go on to the later grades, and they eventually get to high school and college and so on. That's us in our lives. If we take the chance, or we take the opportunity, and turn the opportunity of this life, in particular, or any life, of course, but of this life, to make a difference, to look at ourselves and say, what is God's plan, in general, and how do I fit in this, and how do I do well by God? How do I like there's that song that says, "Our God is an awesome God," right? I always like to think that, God always has a purpose for us. There's always a purpose in whatever it is that's happening to us. It talks about here, any incarnation must have a useful purpose. If you don't need to come back, if you don't need to be here, you won't be forced, or you won't be imposed a new incarnation. But if we believe, if we have faith in God, if we have faith in God's plan, then we can trust that this incarnation and the incarnations of those around us have a purpose. Then it becomes easier to see that what we're doing, or the reason why we're here, is not necessarily punishment, is we're actually trying to get to sixth grade or seventh grade or the next grade. And this is it's a great opportunity for us to do that. The difference being that we could do small steps, we could do leaps. Some have gone, have come here on missions. There's thousands of people with big names and thousands of people with no name that I'm sure have come to this world in mostly a mission to say, I still feel the need to come back and do more good or help the advancement of science, or help the advancement of the Christian message or God's message or of peace, and they come back as missionaries. The rest of us, hopefully we can say, well, it's time that we stop looking at our incarnations and thinking of reincarnation as something that's just going to continue successively over and over again until eternity, because all that's left of us is to recognize this purpose, is to recognize what is it that we are here to do, and how is it that I can do my part in that. So but we're still sometimes doubtful. We still like to think, well, but what about, and then what about this? So he mentions here, well, how about then what happens, for example, up to children that are born and have very short lives, for example, like come in and how is that a purposeful incarnation? How is that how does that make sense if we're saying, well, the purpose of us to come here and try to better ourselves and so on? Then how is it that God permits children to live a short life and be done? And then again, it goes back to the word purpose. I mean, God does nothing useless, and sometimes it's hard to judge any case in particular, but sometimes a spirit accepts the mission to come in as a child and live a few years and depart, and leave a message of hope to others. I mean, in today's society, where there are millions of messages being typed every day, billions of people communicating, a simple message of a child that has lived a happy life despite everything that happened to them. We see videos or pictures of stories of kids that are born without an arm, that are born without legs, and yet are happy children from the day they were born to the day they died, and they have a short life. And sometimes that's their expiation, sometimes it's their decision to have come like that. When they decided to come into this life, into this incarnation, sometimes it's you have to look at God's justice and say, sometimes it's going to be imposed, sometimes it isn't, and it's not for any of us to judge. But how many lives does that message or that image or that idea of a child that was born with nothing, or that can be happy, and how many people has that touched and changed today and will continue to change? So there's no precise answer to everything that happens in our lives, and not a single one of our decisions, or the decisions of anybody in particular, uh, uh, is taken away from them when you think of God's plan. So we're not taking away the decisions that we make. We're not taking away, or God's not taking away our ability to learn or to grow or to make mistakes in particular. And some even when we're looking at horrendous situations, and we're thinking, where is God in all of that? We have to think that people make their decisions, right? That's part of the beauty of the life that God has given us, is this ability to decide what we want to do for ourselves, and but not only that, the responsibility that carries. And if I decide that I'm going to be like the little kid, the little brat in class that's just going to disrupt class all the time, then I will get to be the one that keeps coming back in different situations, and I'm going to be one of these these people that are constantly suffering and going through difficult lives, and one incarnation after the other, because I decide not to do my part well. As instead, when we look at all of this, and how incarnations and reincarnations work, we can start thinking of, instead of saying, well, there's going to be another incarnation, I'll leave this one for the next. We should look at, now that we know this, now that we know of these opportunities that are afforded to us by God, of making a difference in each other's lives, growing ourselves, and taking this opportunity that we have here today, this incarnation, and trying to make a difference now, because it seems to be one of these almost loopholes in the theory of reincarnation, or the doctrine, as Kardec says, that we can always just keep coming back. And well, if I didn't do it here, I'll do it next time around. But these opportunities, as the spirits tell us, and as we look at this globe getting to over 7 billion people, we'll get to 8 billion people soon enough. At some point, it becomes unsustainable for everyone, for the population to continue to grow tremendously. So, and we will have to be getting in these longer and longer lines to come back as needed. So, the idea then of making the best of what we have right now is what really matters. So, well, but this life is really tough, or I'm surrounded by people who are problematic in my life, whether it's my family, whether it's people around me at work, whatever it is. I'm always having trouble with people, or I have difficulty with people, and if you think about, how do you learn virtues? How do you acquire virtues? I mean, how do you acquire patience, for example? Are you really going to acquire patience by just going to the top of a mountain and being there, and living there in silence for years upon years? Is that going to give you patience? Or, being away from people for so long, is that going to just make you go crazy as soon as you hear somebody else's voice, for example, right? So, the best way for us to exercise our virtues is by interacting with others that have similar, or hopefully worse defects from us. people who we can learn from, is getting together with our family, with those people who are, that seem to be problems in our lives. We are here to work together, to grow together. So, as I was watching Haroldo the other day, and he was talking about, well, if you're in this life and you think that, sometimes we ask for, oh, I really want, I really like to have people, to be around people who are better, and instead of working, so look at our family members that, somehow we have our issues since we were growing up, and we're like, oh man, why don't I have a better family, or why don't I have better people around me, and so on. And he said, well, if you find yourself, well, first of all, if you think about this life as an opportunity to grow, you're either going to be an opportunity to learn, or you're going to be tested on what you learned, right? Just like school. There's a part of, well, this is what I'm learning. Then eventually you get to a point where, well, let's test to make sure that you've learned this lesson before you move on to the next unit or the next grade. And and in a similar way, that's our lives too. So, he said, well, if you find yourself surrounded by a lot of people who are difficult in your life, and you're always having trouble, they're always giving you trouble, then maybe that's already your test. Maybe that's just your final test. So this is when you need to actually reach in and get that last bit of patience, that last bit of brotherly love that you can, because that, as soon as that's solved, that's your final test for that particular problem. Or maybe it's the final test for this incarnation, and in the next go around you're in a better world, or you've moved on from this difficult planet or from those difficult people in your life. And he said, take that opportunity. Be thankful that you got that opportunity. Oh, my brothers or my parents, they're really tough on me. We don't get together. Thank God for them. Thank God for this opportunity of growing with them. Because the inverse could be different. If we think of, if you look around and everybody you look, think of this idea of the test, right? If you're around people and everybody is patient with you, even though you're problematic, everybody around you looks at you and say, oh, you should, maybe if you look at life this other way, things will be better. And you're just causing all kinds of, sometimes we don't even notice it, right? But sometimes we're the ones causing trouble in their lives. And, if you look around and everybody else is happy and, you end up being the one causing trouble in their lives, you're their test. They're the ones that are being tested, and you're the test. So, instead of looking and trying to aim to be around better people, embrace everyone who's around you. If that's what's difficult in your life, this is the opportunity to grow. It can be family, it can be friends, long lost friends, people that we once thought we loved, and now we're not sure anymore, but we still have that grudge and relationship. This is the time to fix that. This is the time to work on that, because first off, if you've shown that, if it is a test and you've shown that you can pass the test, you're done. And they'll be left behind, right? And if this is just how life is going to be, and you're going to be miserable for that, you're going to be missing that test. You're going to be going through those problems this time around. And you know what's going to happen? Just like the kid that goes back to the same grade again, at some point you're going to go back and do the same thing again and be tested again. So might as well fix it now, right? Might as well, take this opportunity, of the, especially, when we get to the end of the year and it's another year's over and it's Christmas and, we're thinking of the birth of Jesus and all of the love and the message and the peace that we want to wish each other. Maybe this is the opportunity, maybe this is the time, maybe 2018 is the year, that will fix all of our problems right at the end. Of course. And, look at lives, at life and saying, these are just my tests for this time around. And, I can take it, and I have a purpose. I might not know what that is yet, but I know what kind of purpose it is. So my actions will define what that purpose is. And, I can trust and I can have faith that God will put me in the right position to be the right purpose for the people around me. If I'm working towards that, and if I'm working to better myself, then, this might just be the last time I incarnate, and I never have to feel this punishment again, right? And so, or conversely, actually, we can, once we start changing our attitude towards the difficulties in our lives and seeing them as this opportunity to grow and this opportunities that God's giving us to show to ourselves and to others that we can be better, then at that point, once we realize and once we actually are doing that in our lives, we realize that there's nothing about this that's punishment. Living is great. Living is beautiful. And, we might have to come back one more time, who knows? But, if we don't treat it as a punishment, there's nothing, there's everything to be thankful for and to be happy for. I hope this was a good conversation. There was a lot of thoughts going through my mind, hard to put it together sometimes, but I wish you all, a great end of the year. We'll see you again in 2018. Merry Christmas to everyone, and Happy New Year. And now I guess Chris is going to do our passes, and passes are some exchange of energy between our the past mediums and ourselves. We don't have it's optional, and we'll start following here. Thank you, and have a great night.